B versus Kisame during the Kage summit is an overlooked fight in Naruto. This is most likely because Kisame made really light work of B, but this is because he countered B pretty hard. Kisame is definitely on the upper half of the pecking order in the Akatsuki, but how do the other members do against him? There are several members that are definitely weaker than B, but matchups are crucial to who wins a fight in Naruto. This is why someone like Sasori had a hard time against Chiyo and Sakura. They countered him perfectly despite the fact that they're significantly weaker than him. Anyway, I'm going to match up most of the Akatsuki members versus B, only excluding Konan and Obito, because they were never really meant to try to catch a tailed beast. The only win condition is to capture B alive, but it's important to not create too much commotion because that will attract the fourth raikage and make the task significantly harder. First, I'll talk about the zombie duo, starting with Hidan. Before I talk about Hidan, I need to bring up that B is not willing to turn into the Eight Tails in his current situation. The reason why he didn't against Kisame is because he didn't want to endanger his newly found friends, and he didn't want to be discovered while he was hiding from the raikage. Basically, he doesn't want to hurt his friends, and he wants to sustain his freedom. But if the conditions were to change, he could turn into the Eight Tails. Anyway, how does Hidan do against B in this unique setting? We all know that Hidan is a one-trick pony, so is he going to be able to draw blood from B? We have decent knowledge on how proficient Hidan is with his skeeth. He was able to draw blood from Asuma with a knuckle guard knife, but he wasn't able to draw blood from Kakashi with a kunai. As for B, he is pretty proficient in Kenjutsu. He was able to defeat Suigetsu in a sword fight with a normal sword when Suigetsu had an executioner blade. He also fatally wounded Sasuke in a sword fight, but he was using more swords than he has available in this scenario. B only has 2 swords on him, but this will be enough to defeat Hidan in a sword fight. He's proven that he's better with blades than Hidan, and he can use lightning style to cut through Hidan's skeeth. Basically, Hidan can't even scratch Kakashi, while B fatally wounded Sasuke, and this shows the gap in their abilities. The problem is though, how will B incapacitate Hidan without drawing too much attention to himself? We can expect for B to stab Hidan, and then watch as Hidan regenerates from his wounds. B will get a rough idea on how his immortality works, and then go for the head. I'm confident B can do this without much of a problem, so Hidan loses pretty hard here, and B doesn't have to rely on the Eight Tails at all. Next, let's talk about Kage versus B. Kage is different from Hidan in that he will be able to harass B's friends and use that to his advantage. The reason why he can harass them is because he can use 4 masks at once, and this makes him excellent at multitasking. B's friends are defenseless against these masks, so this will put B in a difficult place. He can use lightning style to destroy the mask, but they'll swarm his friends, and this will cause B to begin to rely on his Eight Tails. He'll start with the version 1 cloak, and destroy a mask just through his physical force alone. He'll then press the offensive, so Kage will have to use his mask on B instead of his friends. How do Kakuzu's masks do against B though? People rave about how powerful they are, but Kakashi took a point-blank blast from the wind mask, and it didn't even do much damage to him. It ripped off his jacket and scuffed him up some, but it's not something that will kill you in 1 or 2 hits. B is definitely more durable than Kakashi, especially if you consider his version 1 or 2 cloak. B was even able to take a kick from Sasuke and not even flinch, so I think these masks pose little threat to B. B will take down another mask, and Kakuzu will transition to his defensive form using his last 2 masks. So how does Kakuzu fare at this point in the battle? Well, Kakuzu was actually able to briefly hold the 2 tails up while she tried to step on him, and when she finally stepped on him, he still was able to continue the fight. There's no evidence to support this, but I think the 2 tails is physically stronger than B in his version 2 state. I'm not saying that Kakuzu can afford to be knocked around by B, but I do think he has an okay matchup here. He's definitely slower than him, but his earth style jutsu that allows him to harden the skin will let him hold his ground. I don't think this will last forever though, and B will use his version 2 state to take down Kakuzu. His strength and speed is superior, so he could win a lengthy brawl, and he could use his lightning style to pierce through Kakuzu's skin. Earth style is weak to lightning style, so I don't think Kakuzu's skin would be able to hold against a lightning amped sword. More than likely after a long taijutsu exchange though, Kakuzu loses due to being worn down by version 2B. Next, let's talk about Sasori versus B. I don't think Sasori will exploit B's friends as much and would rather just kill them. He's overconfident and sadistic, so I'd expect them to be poisoned early in the fight because they challenge Sasori just like how they challenge Kisame. So this will turn into a one-on-one matchup almost immediately. B will understand that if he's poisoned, he'll lose the fight and will instantly take Sasori as a serious threat. Sasori's poison takes 3 days at most to kill someone, and it takes 3 days at least to seal a tailed beast. You may think that Sasori won't resort to using poison, but I think he will. He should be able to bring an antidote with him so that he can use it to save B later on. We know that Chiyo created an antidote for Hanzo's poison, so it's not unusual for puppet masters to create antidotes along with poison. Sasori manufactured this poison himself anyway, so he should know how to create an antidote easily. This means that turning into the Eight Tails at all is not an option for B, because such a big target would surely get poisoned. Sasori will bring out the third Kage puppet out to start the fight, and this makes us question what B can do against the Iron Sand. Magnet Release is the combination of Earth and Wind style, so this actually means that Lightning style doesn't counter it. Lightning counters Earth, but Wind counters Lightning, so I think it cancels out. Sakura wasn't even able to dent Sasori's masses of Iron Sand, so I imagine that even version 2 B couldn't even do it, or at least not do significant damage to it. Even if B has a speed advantage here, Sasori's Iron Sand will be able to react and block all of B's attacks. This will cause B to go into version 2, because while in version 2, Sasori won't be able to pierce B's skin. Orochimaru's Kusanagi blade couldn't do it against version 2 Naruto, so I don't think Sasori could do it either. I don't think stage 2 will allow B to get past the Iron Sand though, and this means an unstoppable force has met an immovable object. Sasori can't poison B and B can't touch Sasori. This means it's a battle of endurance, but I'm not sure who wins that. Sasori doesn't have to use much chakra to use Magnet Release, and B has to use a lot to maintain version 2, but he has a lot of chakra to spare. I'm leaning towards Sasori lasting longer, but I'm not sure. I think at a certain point in the fight, B will begin to realize that he's running out of chakra, and he'll simply just decide to run away, and Sasori won't be able to catch him with his inferior speed. This is kind of a lame outcome for their fight, but it's what I think would happen. If B chooses not to flee, then it comes down to who runs out of chakra first, which could be either one. I'm going to declare this one a draw. Next, let's talk about Deidara versus B. It's harder for Deidara to capture a host alive, but it's not impossible as he was able to capture Gaara. Deidara is likely to use B's friends as leverage, as he did use the destruction of the Sand Village as leverage against Gaara. Anyway, considering how he approached Sasuke, he should start off with an ambush, and then feel out B with some smaller explosives. Once this exchange ends, we can expect for Deidara to get on a C2 Dragon, and at this point B will be playing Deidara's game. Deidara won't have his minefield like he did against Sasuke, but he can target B's friends to gain a tactile advantage. In order to save his friends, B is going to have to use a version 2 cloak to literally tank the explosions for his friends. This will go on for a little while, but all these C2 explosions will just attract the raikage, just like how Kisame's water dome did. This is the worst possible scenario for Deidara, but it's not going to be a cakewalk for the AB combo to close the gap that Deidara creates when he's in the air. They'll realize that the only way to do this is for B to transform into the A-Tails, and everyone else but the raikage will just get out of the way. Once that happens, I'd expect for the Raikage to get on the Eight Tails and either be thrown towards or jump towards Deidara. This may not work the first time, but it will eventually. Even besides that, though, Deidara can't use his nano explosives because he doesn't want to kill B. Also, even if he could pull off C3, I think B can tank through that well enough so that he could continue the fight. Deidara doesn't have an answer for these two, and will either have to retreat or be killed. I'd expect him to attempt to self-destruct, but I don't see the Raikage letting him do that. Basically, Deidara is a victim of circumstance and takes on more than he can handle. Next, let's talk about Itachi versus B. I know that Itachi has conflicting feelings over catching tailed beast, but for the sake of the video, let's say that he is committed to capturing the Eight-Tails. Itachi isn't the type of guy to endanger B's friends, so they should be a non-factor here. We've seen B fight Edo Itachi a little base to base, and they were mostly an even matchup. We did see in their exchange though that Itachi could put B under Genjutsu rather easily. The Eight-Tails was bailed out, but if Itachi were to use something like Tsukiyomi, then B would lose. Genjutsu is inconsistent in Naruto, but in this fight I think it's very relevant. Obito was able to use a Koto Amatsu Kami like Genjutsu on the third Mizukage, and despite the fact that he was a perfect Jinchuriki like B, he was still victim to that Genjutsu for years. Itachi is even better at Genjutsu than Obito, so it shouldn't be crazy to say that he can put B under Tsukiyomi. He successfully used a base Sharingan Genjutsu, so Tsukiyomi will be even easier to use. Some of you may think that the Eight-Tails will bail him out, but that's not true. Tsukiyomi is over as fast as Itachi wants it to be, and the Eight-Tails won't be able to react in time. Itachi could break B's mind like he did to Sasuke and Kakashi's, and at that point the fight would be over. Genjutsu aside though, Itachi's Susanoo wouldn't be broken by version 2B, considering it mostly cancelled out with Kirin. Itachi is the ultimate defense, which makes this a losing battle for B, but what I really think does B in is Tsukiyomi. So either B is defeated by Tsukiyomi, or he decides to flee once he realizes he can't break Itachi's Susanoo. Finally, let's talk about Pain versus B. When the Diva Path regained his powers, he almost instantly used Almighty Pull to pin Naruto, so I expect him to do the same for the 8-Tails Jinchuriki. Sage Mode Naruto was defenseless against this, so I expect the same for B. Pain will pin B's hands into the ground, and this will force B to go into version 2 state in order to break free. We've actually seen the Diva Path face off against Naruto in a version 2 state with 6 tails, so we know a little bit about how this matchup goes. B has 8 tails, but he has a less powerful tailed beast, so it's hard to compare the two. Almighty Push failed to repel Naruto in this state, so I imagine it's a similar case for B. Perhaps it could repel him a little, but I seriously doubt it would be enough to really affect B. I expect all the other passive pain to be destroyed, and the Diva Path will retreat towards Nagato. Once he's close enough, he will use Planetary Devastation, and this will attract the Raikage. While the Raikage is heading over, how does B do against Planetary Devastation? B fell victim to Planetary Devastation against Edo Nagato, and didn't really have an idea on what to do without Itachi's help. It'd be natural for him to transform into the 8-Tails and try to blow it up, but I don't think it'll work. It took a Rasen Shuriken, a Tailed Beast Bomb, and some Yasaka beads to stop Planetary Devastation, and this was early in its development. By the time B stopped resisting and decided to fire at it, it would have gotten so big that it wouldn't destroy it. When Naruto almost fully transformed into the 9-Tails though, he was able to resist Planetary Devastation from fully immobilizing him. I think the 8-Tails would do the same, but this is a losing battle for him. While he's resisting Planetary Devastation, the Raikage and company will show up to deal with Pain. Pain would decide to use Planetary Devastation on his new opponents, and use those chunks of earth to cover up the 8-Tails too. C and Darui will try to take shelter on the 8-Tails, but how does the Raikage do against Planetary Devastation? We know that the third Raikage frequently had to subdue the 8-Tails, and this meant he had to do it with his brute force. The third Raikage and fourth Raikage are very close in terms of power and strength, and this is troubling for Pain. He has to work against the 8-Tails strength and someone who is relative to the 8-Tails strength at the same time. I don't think he has it in him to subdue both, and eventually Planetary Devastation will be undone. At this point in the fight, Pain will be running out of chakra, while A and B will have plenty left to spare. He can try his best to play defense for a while, but eventually the Raikage is going to rip him to shreds. So just like Deidara, Pain is a victim of circumstance and takes on more than he can handle. So it turns out no one in the Akatsuki is likely to capture B, except for maybe Itachi. Sasori has a chance, but B's lateral speed is far greater, so he could flee if he wanted to. Pain, Kisame, and Deidara cause too much commotion, and unfortunately attract the Raikage, which would be their demise. B definitely benefits from the Raikage being nearby, but he also holds up well in most matchups, except against Kisame. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more videos in the future. Comment something if you have something to say, and thank y'all for watching, and I guess I'll see y'all next time.